Every now and then, a business comes along that changes the rules. Not by inventing a new product, but by making people see an old one in a completely different way. Grind is one of those businesses. What started as a single independent cafe in London Shoreditch has become one of Britain's most recognisable brands. But coffee was never really the story. This is a story about vision, bold decisions, and relentless execution. A brand that doesn't just sell a product, it shapes a culture. Welcome back to Coffee with Cadro, with the roastery behind us, which is pretty impressive, and I'm really pleased to welcome David Abrahamovitch. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
It's really so interesting to hear how these stories start out, and so I'd love you to sort of take us right back.
It started on a little building in Old Street Roundabout. So my dad signed the lease on what was then the family business, a mobile phone shop, in 1993. I would work in that building as a summer job, and I really learned so much about the world in my summer jobs there, selling phones, repairing phones, talking to customers, pretending on the phone to be a grown-up even though I was 13 or 14 trying to sell someone something or another. So I learned a huge amount there, and he didn't own the building, but he had a very long lease, and it really felt like it was our building. As you know, unfortunately, he passed away when I was 25, so I inherited the business, decided to close down the mobile phone element of it, but really wanted to do something with that original building. And I felt that the best use for it was a coffee shop, and I thought, that looks easy. Let's do that.
You actually opened next door to a Starbucks.
Yeah. I always think that one of the great things was I didn't have to pick a first location, because we had a first location. And actually that it was solving backwards from got this location, what we're going to do with it. We were so lucky with that first location. And I think there's a world in which I did all of the same things, but we're not sat here having this conversation because we just didn't have that prime, visible, such a unique unit that everyone knew and could see. And that allowed the business to be a success from day one. I didn't think twice about the Starbucks next door, honestly. Did not think twice about it. No. I think Starbucks do what they do, and they do some things really well, and there's things that I think they could do differently or better. But we are, of course, in competition with Starbucks. But in reality, we're in competition for attention and for people's time as much as anything else.
It goes way beyond just a coffee shop, if you like. Cocktails, DJs, a whole culture around that. Was that intentional from the start? And also, when did it start going from something that might be temporary to something that this is actually real? We're creating a whole new concept in coffee culture.
We were throwing people out at 5 p.m. and it was busy. I was like, this is insane. Like, we need to do, beer and cocktails. So, and that was when kind of the espresso martini thing came about. And of course, if you've got a great coffee and a great espresso machine, you can make a great espresso martini. And that was one of the big building points, because like, oh, hold on, okay, now we're a cocktail bar at night and a coffee shop during the day. We just doubled the business without doubling the overheads, and that kind of allows the next thing to happen, which then allows you to raise a bit of money and replicate. And it's like these early building blocks, like becoming a cocktail bar and adding the music, adding the recording studio upstairs with Kaz, who I set up the first location with. Kaz James is DJ and from Melbourne and an old friend. Those building blocks allowed the whole rest of the story to happen.
The brand has formed just organically, and I think that really does come across. It's such a cool sort of vibe. Yeah. Some of the hilarious ads that I used to see on the tube. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
I think there was one about Jacob Elordi's bathwater just after Saltburn came out. It's like, look, and I think again that our whole tone of voice goes back to the early days, the building blocks, and the cinema sign that we have at Shoreditch Grind, which basically became like our little window onto the world. So whatever had happened, we were commenting on it in the same way that people do on a blackboard outside a coffee shop. But this was like up on a cinema sign in front of 100,000 vehicles a day going through that roundabout or something, right? So this was our version of reacting to politics, to culture, to music, and that became the tone of voice that's on the tube ads and even on our packaging. And like, it's all about just finding those ways to separate yourselves from the much bigger businesses that don't do this stuff and don't have fun.
How did you adapt to COVID? and what actually came out of COVID?
I guess chapter 2 starts 2019.
Right.
We're at that point, I don't know, dozen stores, 300 people or something, 3 rounds of crowdfunding, fairly visible, proper business. And having just done our third and what turned out to be our final crowdfunding, we had some money and we had that earmarked to do 3 stores, let's say £1 million per store. We instead kind of made quite a strategic decision for once, because there wasn't always that strategic, it was much more kind of instinct and evolution. Let's put this money into a new roastery and into compostable coffee pods for the home.
What was your instinctive reason for that investment? That's a lot of money.
I think the itch was, I feel like I should be making coffee at home, but I'm not, and that kind of feels insane. And then I guess the push on the whole thing was just people telling me how much they love the Grind brand all the time. And this was kind of like subscription and D2C is booming. So it was like, hold on, okay, coffee pods could fit through a letterbox, could work on subscription, could be a way to take the brand outside of just our physical stores and nationally and internationally. And so that was kind of but again, it was like a number of kind of itches and pushes and pulls towards making that decision. But then obviously, look, I think that was a good and sound set of decision making, and I think that was a good thing to do. But then COVID comes along in March 2020, and it obviously got proven by circumstance through luck, if you can call COVID luck. It's a bit strange thing to call it, but through what happened, it turned out that having an online arm of the business was really, really important.
Some of the partnerships, are some of the most significant, I would say, in retail. So obviously Soho House, British Airways, you're now B Corp certified,
yep,
which is incredible. Can you talk to us a bit about that?
It's crazy, but the direct consumer business is the biggest part of the business now. It's about twice the size of the high street business or something. But we're also in grocery now, so our instant coffee, whole bean pods and ready to drink cans are in about 10,000 stocking points across the UK, all of the major grocers. So that's a huge part of the business and the fastest growing part of the business now. I mean, food service, offices, hotels, and then partnerships as well. So most notably, as you said, Soho House and British Airways kind of our two key ones. So Soho House we've been working with since 2020 as well. A lot happened in 2020. They've been amazing partners and obviously amazing for visibility, and we work with them globally. So we roast for them in New York as well, and we supply them in pretty much all of their locations except for 1 or 2 of the really far-flung ones. And then British Airways, we started on board with them 2 summers ago. So that was only on European routes to begin with. But as of a month ago, we've expanded that, and we're now their preferred global coffee partner. So you'll find us in the lounges and on all the long haul flights as well.
Do you literally go and knock on the door of Soho House? Do you knock on the door of British Airways? How does that work?
In my experience, it happens in probably 1 of 2 different ways. Like, there's something to be said for just staying alive, staying in the game, doing a good thing, keeping to your values, and things do come along. Because when British Airways are thinking, okay, we've been with the old coffee partner for a while, maybe we should go see what's out there, you're on the list of people that get an email. So, I think that particular one, we're actually at a trade show primarily designed for grocery. We had one of our pink trucks there serving coffee, giving out product, and it was that instigated the conversation. So, we spent however much we spent to be at some grocery trade show, and it was helpful for that, but actually probably the biggest thing we got out of it was the BA thing. And look, probably I would like to think that we would have ended up in the process of, okay, we're going to have an initial conversation with 10 companies, Grind would be on the list. So I think there's something to just sticking to your values and sticking what you do, and then staying alive, getting scale, and these things come to you. And then sometimes it can be just someone at a really high level can help make it happen. But these things are always, everyone gets very focused on how did the first thing happen? But in reality, the first thing is the first 0.5%. Doing the deal with British Airways took a long time, and it took a huge number of meetings and involved probably 3 dozen people, if not more, at British Airways, right? So much as the opening of the door is really important, and you kind of have to get the doors open however you can in whichever, but you've got to have so much to actually deliver: supply chain, health and safety, product quality, brand reach, like technical stuff. You've got to be willing to go through the contracting process, and like there's a lot that comes after that initial door opening as well. And that's just stuff that you pick up and you learn over time. And your second deal with a big company is slightly easier than your first deal with a big company.
What do you think your kids would look back most eventually? And what would they be? What would make them smile most, do you think, about what you created?
I would just like them to go, okay, well, he created this thing and it's great and people really like it, and it's added to the world in some tiny way. It's like it's been net beneficial to the world. So the customers love it, people have it in their homes and like it, the people that work there are glad it exists and they're glad they work for that organisation, and it carries on and it means something, right? And I think there is a value to creating a brand that is going to outlive you. But that's what I want, really. I want it to just continue to stand for what it stands for and be perceived as being good. And I'm sure it will go through shifts and I'm sure it will have some ups and some downs, but you know, just something that outlives you, right? It's like, why are we drawn to building buildings or these? I think as humans, we're kind of instinctively drawn to creating things which might outlast us.
What was that drove you to have the confidence to launch something like this?
Yes, it's a good question. And I look back and I think, God, what was he thinking? Like, what was 25-year-old me thinking? But look, I think part of the answer is being 25 is great because you think you know everything. And I was convinced back then that I knew a lot more than I think I actually know now, despite having 15 years of now, you know, building the business. I think didn't overthink it too much, just cracked on. I think I had the fire on my back of, well, I either need to figure out a way for this building to pay the rent or I have to give this building up pretty soon, and just kind of believing that it would be fine. Look, and I think it's important. I think if you're going to run an organisation, any organisation, you need to believe that you as an individual are going to get it right more times than you get it wrong. So you have to believe you can get it right every time. I've made plenty of mistakes, but I probably do believe that on balance, I'll get 6 out of 10, maybe more. And I think you have to be able to convince yourself of that, and then you have to be able to convince other people on that, right? Like, and building anything is about, I'm going to walk up the hill, are you coming with me, kind of thing. You know, if I'd sat down in 2011 and said, I'm going to build the UK's, you know, breakout challenger coffee brand, and we're going to do stores and online and grocery and B2B, and we're going to do all of our own manufacturing, and we're going to do a B Corp, and we're going to have stores in Dubai and roastery in New York. I mean, you'd be like, your head would just fall off, right? So bit by bit, believing your gut and your instinct, but knowing when you probably should listen to other people as well. Look, and I think there's another important thing to this, which again is something that I only really appreciate now, is the safety net that I had around me to be allowed to make those mistakes that not everyone has. And I think that's, you know, I feel now really grateful that I had that. Like, the worst thing that was going to happen to me then was it was going to go wrong, the lease would have got surrendered, I wouldn't have been able to pay the rent on my nice Shoreditch flat anymore, and I'd have had to move back in with my mum into her house. That was a worst case scenario for me, which was not that bad. And not everyone has that as a worst case scenario, right?
I remember being on the roof at Shoreditch House many times with you. We were flying in the city, me and Luke and other people who you knew, and you were just finishing college or I think uni, UCL, and we were saying to you, come and join the fun in the city, come on. And for some reason, and I remember this, I've never told you this, but I remember you saying,
God, what did I say?
I'm going to be an entrepreneur. It was
really?
It was like you knew at that age you had a free pass to come into the city with us lot and earn a very good load of money, because it was free money in those days. But you held back and you didn't. You stuck with your own drive and belief in what we've just been talking about for the last hour.
I didn't really remember that conversation.
Yeah, you were younger than 25.
It sounds about right. Yeah. Look, and I think, you know, you're right. The absolute obvious route, where a lot of my friends were, where some of my family friends were, like, that path was green lit. Just go do that. And listen, there were moments after opening the first store before today, where I thought, geez, my life would have been easier if I'd just gone and done that. This is so stressful and so hard. And there was plenty of moments, especially like in the early days when all of my friends who have done that route are starting to kind of go up and up and up by whatever measures you want, you know, mainly in earnings. And that's not happening to me, and I'm still running around doing this coffee thing. There were moments when I second guessed that, for sure. I think probably the answer to that question probably is my dad, in terms of just from an early age watching him do his thing in his way, which appeared from the outside to be going wherever he wanted, whenever he wanted, in his classic car or one of his motorbikes, and just rolling around having a lovely time, and being an entrepreneur, and not my mum, who I realise now with hindsight was the sensible one, who was actually, you know, keeping things level while he did this. And obviously, you know, you see these things all very differently at 40 than you do at 25, right? So, but I realised that, you know, that looked fun, want to do that kind of thing, rather than necessarily go get a full-time job. And I did try, I did some internships in some banks and stuff like that, and I just didn't feel that that was the right environment for me, and I was not drawn to it.
We're just coming now towards the end, where we've got a couple of quick fire questions. So what feels uniquely Grind now?
Irreverence, not taking yourself too seriously, but underpinned by quality.
Instinct or data?
Instinct in the early days.
Yeah.
The bigger the business becomes, the more data is important.
What have you protected at all costs?
Protect the culture at all costs. Because the business is the people that work in it, and culture takes forever to build, is super easy to destroy in minutes.
What's got better as you've grown?
You know what? Quality. And I fundamentally reject the idea that big equals bad. Look, there are temptations to cut corners along the way, and you have to push those back and say, no, we're not going to do that. But I think quality is an upward line along with scale.
But what's got worse as you've grown?
My hair colour got greyer and greyer. Do you know what? I think what's got worse is the temptation for distraction has got worse. The bigger you get, the more visible you become, the more you get random things which all on their own sound really interesting. Oh yeah, I'd love to do that. Oh yeah, that sounds good. Oh, I like that brand. We should work with them. But that is very dangerous, because it just leads to a dilution of everything. And suddenly all of the teams are spending all of their time doing these random things, and they've forgotten about the, 50 million coffee pods we're going to make and sell this year that, might not be, it's routine now, but that has to still be really good, and that's what pays the bills.
What would you tell the version of you starting out now?
It's all going to be okay. Keep going.
Well, that links on to my last question. Keeping in the game and keep going.
Yeah.
Are Arsenal going to win the Premiership?
It's frustrating that it's not in the bag already, but I'm still just about believing. This is either going to age well or badly.
Yeah,
isn't it?
I know. We'll be watching this in a few months. Thank you for speaking so openly and honestly. We just want to wish you all the best with everything.
Thank you.
And thanks again for taking the time out.
Thank you for all your help as well.